Hi, boys and girls. Today I'd like to read a book called Bach. I know it looks like batch, but it's Bach. The H is silent. It's by Anne Rocklin and illustrated by Susan Hellard. And illustrations mean all the drawings. And Bach was a famous child because he was very musical, and he also grew up to be a famous musician. So we're going to read about him and how he was when he was a child. Okay, let's begin. Bach. Famous children. Johann Sebastian Bach's father and mother died in 1694. That's a long time ago. He was almost 10. So he's long gone now. This is the year 2016. So 1694 to 2016 is a long time. And I bet you're old enough to do the math for yourself, so I'll let you do that. When this happened, he went to live with his big brother, Christoph. His brother Christoph took good care of him. He sent him to school, and each day when Johann Sebastian came home, he would give him a lesson on the clavier, a keyboard instrument, something like a piano. Johann loved music more than anything. Christoph was a composer and played the organ at Ordorf, where they lived. He was very strict and would only allow Johann Sebastian to practice for 1 hour every day. The little boy hated to hear the words, "That's enough for today, Johann. Now go and do your arithmetic and the rest of your homework." Boring, boring, Johann Sebastian grumbled to himself as he went off. When he left the music room each day, Johann Sebastian would look up at Christoph's music in the cabinet, which was always locked. The tall cabinet had crossed wooden bars covering the shelves. Through the bars, Johann could see that very special book. Oh, how he longed to hold it in his hands. Johann Sebastian knew that the book was full of exciting music. The pieces Christoph gave him to play were easy, and he knew them by heart. He begged Christoph for new music, but the reply was always the same. It wasn't fair. He would be especially careful with that book. So why was Christoph so worried? "Oh, please, Christoph, don't say no. I won't hurt it. I promise." Little Johann's face would crinkle in disappointment as his big brother sternly shook his head. "Not yet. You're not old enough. And I don't want your grubby finger marks all over my best music book." It was late, and Johann Sebastian lay in his bed, but he could not sleep. The book filled his thoughts. He heard Christoph go to bed, and soon the house was dark and quiet. He sat up in bed. "Maybe I can just look at that book," he thought. And he tiptoed to the bedroom door. It was very cold, and he shivered. Slowly he eased the door open and crept out on the landing. He could hear his brother's heavy breathing. Christoph was fast asleep. He crossed the landing to the top of the stairs, now to get down them quietly. Holding on to the banister, he went down one step, then another. He reached the bottom of the stairs, his heart beating furiously. Silently he went toward the music room. The door was closed, and the handle slipped in his moist hand. He wiped his hand on his nightshirt and opened the door. The curtains were open, and the full moon was shining in on the cabinet, and that precious book. Johann Sebastian quietly pulled the door closed behind him and went to the bookcase. There, he could see the book above his head. He stretched up, but he was too small. He looked around the room. A chair, that's what he needed. Very carefully, he carried a chair across the room and quietly put it down in front of the music cabinet. Then, without making a sound, he climbed onto the chair and lifted his arm to reach the top shelf. There he is. Even on tiptoes, it was no good. He was still too small. Now what? He needed something to put on the chair. Oh, on the table lay Christoph's big history book. Just what I need, thought Johann Sebastian, and scrambled down to get it. He lifted the book onto the chair, and once again he climbed on the edge and then onto the book. He could just reach Christoph's precious music book. Squeezing his hands in between the bars, he managed to slip it out. There, at last, he had it in his hands. Johann Sebastian climbed down and put the history book and the chair back where they belonged, and with the music book clutched tightly in his hands, he made his way upstairs to the safety of his room. In the bright moonlight, he could read the music easily. It was beautiful. He had to have it. There was only one thing to do. He got out his pen and ink and his manuscript paper, and by the light of the moon, he set to work copying down every single note. Remember, in 1694, there was no electricity, so no copy machines. He had to do everything by hand. Just before sunrise, he hid his precious sheets of manuscript paper under his mattress. Retracing his steps downstairs, he carefully put Christoph's book back on the shelf. Christoph would never know. Wearily, he climbed the stairs again, got into bed, and fell fast asleep. It seemed only 5 minutes later when Christoph hammered on the door, calling, "Johann, why aren't you up? You'll be late for school. Hurry up!" Johann Sebastian Bach fell asleep at his desk that day. The teacher was not at all pleased. Johann was so tired that he even made mistakes at the clavier, and Christoph was angry with him too. But Johann Sebastian put up with the scolding. He had his secret, and nothing would stop him. The next night, the moon shone again, and Johann Sebastian crept downstairs to the music room. Every night, for 6 long months, he worked on climbing the stairs with the precious book, copying all the thousands of notes until he was finished. As he placed the book back in the cabinet for the last time, he jumped down from the chair and smiled happily. Now it's mine. I can't wait to play every piece for myself when Christoph is out. And he hurried back upstairs, and placing his copy under the mattress, he slept soundly till morning. It was a lovely spring morning, and after breakfast, Christoph announced, "I am going to the church to practice for service next Sunday, and I'll be back in an hour or so." Johann Sebastian could hardly wait for him to go. He heard the front door close, and after waiting for a few minutes, he ran upstairs, grabbed his music sheets, and flew downstairs to the music room. Soon he was at the clavier, playing his own copy of Christoph's special book. He was so engrossed in the music that he did not hear the front door open as Christoph returned for his coat. He nearly jumped out of his skin when a furious voice behind him thundered, "So, you disobeyed me! You have my book! Give it to me at once!" "No, Christoph, it's not your book. Oh, please, Christoph, I didn't hurt it. Honestly, I didn't." Christoph marched over to the clavier and saw the careful copy of his book. "I see. You copied it. Very well. Now you will see what happens to disobedient boys. Give it to me." "No, Christoph, don't take it from me. It's mine," wailed poor Johann Sebastian. His elder brother grabbed the precious manuscript and strode out of the room, saying, "I will not tolerate disobedience. You will never see these pages again." And the front door slammed. Johann Sebastian sat at the clavier, tears rolling down his cheeks. All that work wasted. He placed his hands on the keys and began to play. It was the first piece he had copied. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. He sat up straight and his fingers flew across the keyboard. And now he was laughing out loud. He remembered every single note he had written down. All the music was locked safely in his memory. Christoph could never take it away from him. It was his forever. Johann Sebastian Bach grew up to become one of the world's greatest composers. He had 20 children, and 4 of them became famous musicians like Johann. And here are some of the most famous pieces he composed. For organ music, the Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Church music, the Mass in B minor, the St. Matthew Passion. And orchestral music, that means the orchestra plays, the Brandenburg concertos. And that is why Johann Sebastian Bach was a very famous child and a very famous composer, because he could just hear the music and see the music on the page and remember it. That's all for today. Until we read together next time. Bye-bye.